Whenever a VTuber agency has to debut a wave, they have to think thoroughly about the niches they want to cater to and craft a VTuber design that fits the archetype or trope they follow. However, in all VTuber waves, there's a certain role that will be assigned to one of them regardless of their popularity, the anime trope they follow, the money they bring to the agency, or whatever half-baked lore the agency gives them. Well, it's more a title than a role, actually, and that title is the leader. Now, this trope isn't based on anime or fiction, it's based on real life and the psychology of human beings. Similar to how the de facto leaders are established in a classroom by this shared silent agreement by a majority of the class on who is the most intelligent and capable among them, the leader of a VTuber group is also silently agreed upon that can be given to anyone. And how the leader gets chosen can generally vary, because a lot of people have different opinions on what constitutes as a leader. Some people think that the leader is the most popular member of the group because they're often the more iconic one. Some people think it's the generalist among the VTuber group. Some people think the leader is the one who unifies the group and be its core. While for some, the leader is the one that seems to be calling the shots behind the scenes, does the most technical work in group projects, or if they seemingly have the biggest explicit influence in the development of the group and the community around them. Personally, I think the fourth point is what often defines the leader, and as such, I will be basing this video around this definition, because I have other categories for the first 3 points mentioned and I'll be covering those tropes sometime in the future. When it comes down to it, I think the biggest factor that one requires to be classified as the de facto leader ultimately has to go down to the respect and behind-the-scenes power that someone has. Someone who can have plans and projects going not because of the clout and community influence they have, but because even the management knows that these particular members know what they're doing, and that even other members of the group is more inclined to follow what they do and do what they say. But this is based on community judgment, because sometimes the agency itself will be the ones to determine who the leader is for the sake of kayfabe and without necessarily having the kind of behind-the-scenes power that fits my prerequisite. Sometimes, the agency has certain plans for their kayfabe or lore, and as such will label particular VTubers as the leader according to that plan. They probably want to go somewhere with their story or just want to do it as a marketing gimmick. But the thing about this leader type is that this leadership position can be challenged. If a particular member is told to be the leader by the agency but doesn't actually have the charisma and behind-the-scenes contribution that warrants the title of the leader, the fanbase will usually just ignore the agency's kayfabe or just joke about it and meme those VTubers as a failure of a leader. Let me give you an example to both these leader types. Alban is the leader of Noctix, and the reason why that's the case is that his genmates think and know so. Alban is apparently the one calling a lot of shots behind the scenes and ultimately doing a lot of the spearheading for the group in general. Fans of Noctix can also believe this, and so can I. In fact, it's evident in the fact that it was he in Nijisanji that was fighting the Nijisanji EN management to have the Nijisanji and Hololive collab happen. Alban can get shit done in the group in a way no one else can. He inspires and supports everyone in his group behind the scenes in a way no one else can, and as such, he is the leader. However, in the case of Luxium, Luca is the leader apparently, but that's because their kayfabe and management says so. Hell, Luca had to be reminded by management that he was supposed to be the leader for the sake of their kayfabe. Now, maybe some people agree with this, maybe some don't. I don't really find much discussion about leaders in VTuber groups, so I can't really gauge the overall opinion of the general VTuber and the Nijisanji community. So instead, I'm just going to give you my opinion. I don't feel Luca is the leader, and that may be because of my ignorance on certain events or again because I don't really watch much of Luxium anymore, but either way, until provided with enough situations with enough context, I'll stick with this opinion. I don't really know anything noteworthy that Luca has done to give him that status. Because in the case of Luxium, it feels like none of them is the leader, with Vox being probably the pseudo-leader, but I just chalk that up to him having the most power and authority in the group because he's the most popular and has the loudest and biggest fanbase in the branch. But at the same time, he was also the one doing a lot of deep talks and inspiring and giving advice to other members behind the scenes, and apparently, it's his word being prioritized by management according to some rats. So maybe I can see why a lot of people would think he's the leader, and you know what, I'm almost inclined to agree with them. So these two leadership types can happen, and none of them is necessarily less valuable than the other. The community judged leader is valuable because they have the practical power of the leader, where they hold a substantial power, respect, and influence within the branch and agency. And the kayfabe judged leader can be useful for storytelling, marketing, and money-making purposes. It's useful for merch, lore, and character building, or whatever medium of entertainment these agencies are willing to branch out to tell their stories, like in comics or animations or whatever. But sometimes, a marriage of both types can work. These two leader types doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, especially when the agency is so absolutely perfect in choosing the leader for their kayfabe by analyzing the group's dynamic and predicting who among them is going to be the one that will most definitely be in charge of the group. Who is an example of this leader, you may ask? Well, I suppose Regis is a good example of this. He's labeled for kayfabe purposes that he's the leader of Tempus, and you know what? He seems to be responsible for a lot of the endeavors in Tempus, but the even better and more legendary example of this is none other than Amelia Watson. In fact, one of the reasons I even thought of this video and trope was because I wanted more reasons to suck on Amelia Watson's cock even more than I already have. Amelia Watson was set up to be the leader of Myth from the get-go, as the trailers painted her as the detective that'll go on the journey and explore Myth and discover these legendary figures. It was as if she was the primary protagonist of some anime. And whether this was an accident or not, this was the perfect call kayfabe-wise and in a real life. Because the thing about the behind-the-scenes stuff that happens for the Myth Girls is that Amelia Watson is seen to be the most influential to get projects going and instigating community participation. Everyone in Myth has said as much, and the community has seen the fruits and effects of that behind-the-scenes power. I have already covered most of those contributions to the community in an older video, so I'm not going to touch upon them too much this time, but to summarize, her technical know-how and community collaborations have made for one of the most epic content in EN VTubing, and even started as the foundation for a lot of trends. And what adds oomph to all of this is that she is the plain member of Myth. That's not an insult, that's a fact. She doesn't have the conventional idol or VTuber talents that one usually requires to be a marketable VTuber. Singing, dancing, songmaking, painting, she had none of those. Everyone in Myth had these talents in their own way, but not her. What she had were her wits, creative genius, and her above-average gaming skills. And that perfectly suits the setting of Myth, because in the lore, everyone in the group were supposed to be these ancient mythical figures with mystical powers, but Amelia Watson was just a regular human. She was the only normal one in a group filled with mystique, and because of that, she is paradoxically the unique and special one among them. Originally, she wasn't even supposed to have time-traveling powers in her kayfabe. The whole time-traveling powers thing didn't really even exist until Watson pulled the concept from her ass when she was questioned what she could do. And she just ran with it ever since. This plainness and her being the unique one of the group gives her powerful main character energy, and as such, she becomes the leader of Myth both in lore and in real life. When Hololive had framed her as the protagonist of the lore at the very beginning, that leader status could have been challenged. Anyone else could have been the community judged leader of the group, while she remained the kayfabe judged one. But her actions and how she developed the community got her to be both. She is, without a doubt, the perfect exemplar of the leader trope, and I will not entertain any other opinion. And I feel like most Hololive fans also have this opinion too, because based on general community perception, you like sucking Ame's cock for this reason too. It is essentially why a lot of fanfiction around Myth always paints Watson as the main protagonist or the crux of the group. Now, like I said, what makes the leader special is that they can be virtually anyone and be from any trope. The say-so can be the leader just as much as the shitposter and whatever trope you can think of. The leader is more like a title than a trope, and assuming that the leader title is not given by the agency for kayfabe reasons, it's a label given to any one of the members regardless of their size or role in the group dynamic. And this can create a misconception among the fans if not backed up by any of the talents, because a lot of people associate the leader as being the more active and instigating of the group if they don't know what they do behind the scenes. For example, in Hololive Gen 2, when asked about who the leader is, most people would probably say it's Subaru, because for one, she's extroverted and she's pretty much the girl that huddles Gen 2 around. But what most people don't know is that Aqua is actually the one doing the leading and behind the scenes planning. And Subaru herself confirmed this back then. For Hololive Fantasy, one would think that the leader is Marine or Pecora due to their popularity, but it's actually Flare that's the most level-headed, calm, and collected. and despite being the least popular in the group, she's often whom everyone turns to and seemingly respects the most. This type of leader status can be often difficult to determine, because one thing about VTuber groups is that they tend to keep the details of their projects and plans under wraps, and nobody quite knows who is doing the planning, managing, and leading unless someone from that group spills who was making shit happen. Ame's leader status in Myth was really only cemented because everyone in the group, and especially Kiara, couldn't stop sucking Ame's fat cock and shining a light on the things she does behind the scenes for everybody to know. Alban's leader status wouldn't have been determined if Noctix hadn't told the fans about what he has been doing too. But what is the worth of the leader, really? Is there any significance or a tangible thing that one can get from being the leader? Well, no, not anything tangible, because being the leader is not a factor that can be analyzed to determine success and has no real effect on the audience that can translate into their numbers. The reward is usually just respect, not just from the audience but also by the members, managers, and executives of the VTuber agency itself, or even industry professionals. As the leader, community members might turn to them when they want a specific thing done or if they have a project they want to suggest. Sometimes the VTuber members and other VTuber groups turn to them if they want something done. And at a certain point, this might be a curse because a lot of people are going to start expecting things from the leader and literally have their thoughts be valued over others, which may hurt the group dynamic of the branch and put a lot of unnecessary burden on their shoulders. Ultimately, the leader status is not something that can be rewarding in a tangible way. In most cases, it's really just a title, given to VTubers not because they wanted it, but because people, whether that be the fans, the group members, or the VTuber agencies themselves, have decided so. Anyway, that's about it. See ya.